Alrighty, everyone. So Daniel Sala and I are going to be co-hosting Apollymi Mandylion. I've been after her for quite some time. Very happy to have her on my show. Daniel, do you want to just like go back and forth? You ask a question, I ask a question, or do you want to do all yours first and then mine, or how do you want to do it?
Yeah, we can. You can chime in whenever like you feel like the topic is the same and it's related. Anyway, yeah, it's. I agree. It's one of the most fascinating accounts, and despite being really brutal and everything, but yeah, I loved it, and it's really current, and it kind of sheds light on what's happening. And anyway, so I was glad to we landed her, and my first one was. How did you get your memories back in the first place? I know it's through past life, but can you go into more detail?
So I was originally doing a past life regression to see, what past lives that I had. One of the people that I was seeing, who is basically a priest and kind of like a shaman, was walking me through meditation, basically, of trying to open certain doors into my mind, because it had been a while that I had, meditated, so I kind of really forgot how for a while. And I guess he just triggered the right ones, and I started getting these memories just flooding back to me of being on different planets, which, I could still astral travel, so it wasn't really that uncommon, but it was the subjects that were weird when it first started coming back, because I was a kid or a teenager. I was wearing armor that I don't usually have. I remember energy weapons of the plasma pistols and the guns. We were running missions, obviously. I remember killing a lot of people, and that weren't humanoid, and some were human looking. So it started off as like these weird flashes that came to me, and then the next few days after that, more and more started coming back to me. So it wasn't like I downloaded everything and remembered everything all at once. It unlocked the door, and it started to just filter back in. I did get a lot all at once, but it wasn't, everything. So
Right.
It took me a few days to just kind of write everything down. I didn't really know what to make of it at first, so I just documented everything and then started cross-referencing, which is why I started exploring online of what was happening, but later.
And how did you cope with them psychologically? Because I bet it was a handful to deal with.
Well, my life has never really been easy, and those mechanisms that they instill us in the boot camps and the training programs, it still stays with us, even though, well, at least it still stayed with me, even though my memory was blocked, because it kind of forges your personality. And I had a lot of weird stuff happen to me on just normally. So it was like I had this astral life, and I still had paranormal experiences and everything. So it still kept me calm. I wasn't like freaking out or anything, but I'm one of those people who just likes to analyze what's happening to me, being like, okay, is this a dream? Is this logical? I write everything down. Few months to weeks or years later, is something else continuously popping up of the same thing, without me really thinking about it or anything else. So, like, I wasn't freaking out, but I definitely was very intrigued. And, you can't really like freak out about this sort of stuff if you're going to stay logical and get answers, you know what I mean? Like, you can't start manipulating your brain into some sort of imaginary scenarios. It's just not healthy.
Yeah. And I guess it took you a while to actually buy that they were what was happening for real and not just a product of your imagination, right? And was there like an event that sold you on it?
So during the time of the life regressions, I was living in Wyoming at the time, and I was starting to disappear at night. My boyfriend was noticing that the house was still locked up, the windows were locked, and he couldn't find me anywhere. I would wake up with marks on me, bruises, I would be tired. You know, I've woken up with this like yellow dye on me that I had to go wash off. So I was actually getting abducted during that time while we were still trying to do the past life regressions. And, you know, it took us a while to kind of figure out what was perhaps going on, because we don't like to assume anything.
Right. And if you were to add all of them, how many years would you say you served? At least, you know, it's subjective, it's impossible to say, but
From the very first interaction that I had with the ET government and the US military was at least between 5.5 to 6.
but
Well, I
in
started
this,
at 5.5 to 6, and I've never left the programs. There was a time of peace for me between 13 to 22. That was my gap that was blocked. But after realizing that some of my astral traveling and events were actually missions, and they were using new technology to give us dream overlays and everything else, I realized that I haven't really left at all.
but I'm convinced that, I mean, if we learned anything from the other veterans, is that they don't, if you're taken multiple times, you're pretty much taken throughout your life and for a huge interval. So do you feel like you've done like multiple decades at once, like many people do, like 20 MBACs or 40 MBACs? Because these are the chunks that we usually associate with these factions.
I'm not entirely sure. I only have 1 year that when I was a kid that I've jumped timelines before, but like I only have 1 year where I literally, summer never ended for me for quite a few months. So I don't know if they time manipulated me at that point, or if I time jumped or parallel universe jumped. So all of like my entire life has been pretty straight memoried forward. I do know that I have a lot of clones that have been made of me, and a lot of hybrid clones that have been made of me. And I do get residual feedback from them, like if they die or if there's a super event where they're trying to pull power from me because of the soul shards, but connection. But as for being part of the 20 and back program, I don't know a lot about that program, so I couldn't really say if I've been in that program or not.
Yeah, because they return you exactly where they found you. So, and they mind wipe you. So it's pretty much impossible to say for all we know, you might have been there for 1,000 years. But you brought up shards, and I was gonna ask, who takes you as your main self, and who takes you as an alter, if you know?
Can you give me a little bit more detail on what you mean by that?
Yeah. So, who takes you as Apollymi, the main you, and who only takes the compartmentalized part of you that they obtain through torture? That is like a bubble in your head that doesn't share memory with the rest. That's how these usually operate. But if you don't think you did that, that's...
So like the way that I feel everything, like I'm the first consciousness, and so they usually take soul shards from my first body that I had. That body got destroyed, but they basically take the shards out and place them to other bodies, which is why I can sometimes control them from far away if I hack into them, or I can get feedback, or I can get visualization or feeling of the environment. So, but if for like my punishment and everything, the only time I've ever really had punishment to like where they kill me, like they do it to this body here if I'm being punished. Also missions. I'm not using avatars or replacement clones all the time. Like this body goes on a lot of the missions. So, and if I end up dying or getting hurt, they just throw me in the stasis tanks or put me in a med bed.
Yes, and not all take you. Some take your whole body and re-age it. Not everyone uses clones. But you said that you got shards to return to you, and is that helpful? And how did you manage to get them to return? Because it's kind of a rare skill in this field.
So I've been learning what people would call energy manipulation since I was a kid. That's what I was trained for. And throughout all my training, they literally, especially in Camp Livingston, that was one of my most brutal basic training camps ever. And they literally take your powers away and they put you up against other energy users. You know, most of the Aryans have the abilities that we do. And they will literally kill you, grind you into the dirt. So you have to learn how to get around things even though you're blocked. And I just started to, I've had so much of my DNA taken. I've had so much of my shards taken. I learned a couple years ago how to tap into my own energy signature, my very specific energy signature, and learned how to manipulate it far away. So that's how I can hack into some of my clones. The more DNA they have of me in that clone or hybrid body, the easier it is for me to hack into it. And you can call it puppeteering if you want. I can basically possess the body of that and make it do whatever I want. And of course, I'm fighting another willpower because that's how it works. But most of the time I can usually win and either retrieve the soul shard by basically making a wormhole and bringing it back to me, or just by disintegrating it and getting the memories back for downloading.
Cool. Okay. And you also mentioned that you suspect that you're in a clone body right now. Is that true?
So I get shoved into a lot of different bodies. I am part of a project where they are trying to learn what kind of soul quanta can actually fit in certain genetic forms, because each DNA has its own limitations for how much quanta can be subjected to it before it breaks down. And because I lost my original body, they ended up putting me in this program. So I do body jump a lot because my quanta is very high, and I just end up breaking things down. So like I can usually tell when I start having neurological symptoms at nighttime. Usually my bodies will last between 12 to 48 hours if it's a low grade DNA hybrid.
Right. And you also mentioned that there is a veil on Earth, and we also hear this from others, but do you have any clue as to who put it there?
This is a very long conversation part and a very difficult one, because, okay, so the veil is not the same as the matrix. They're two different, completely different ET technologies. The veil, because this is a seed planet, which means that experiments can go on here that do not apply to normal laws in the outer universe. And that's why it's an experimental planet. There is a veil put over so that the amount of energy can be controlled. So that's why it's very hard for anyone with abilities here to make a fireball, use telekinesis, you know, any of the abilities we should have. Because if you take any SSP person who has issues with their abilities here and get them beyond the moon, because that's where the veil really stops.
Or inside the Earth.
Yes. Yeah, or inner Earth. The veil completely just stops, and you will be able to have your abilities, and if you're wearing a matrix suit like I do most of the time, or you have a chip augment that allows you to use the holographic technology for the matrix set on here, you're going to look like your real self.
And can you drop your matrix suit at will?
I cannot. I have to actually get enough energy in my body and an auric field to break it. Which I have stressed it a couple times where I start shifting, and my eyes will actually change my real color.
Wow.
And you don't have to say what you really look like, but can you just give us a hint if it's very different from what we are seeing now?
I look humanoid with pointy ears. My skin is very exceptionally white. I have rainbow prismatic colored eyes. My hair is pink, gold, and white, and I have wings, a tail, and a set of ears on my head. I am technically a genetic experiment that is a hybrid that was supposed to be built for war, but I don't like to listen.
Daniel, can I ask a couple questions real quick?
Go ahead.
Yeah,
sure.
So I remember you saying you did a lot of work, or you spent a lot of time at this camp, Livingston. I live in the state of Louisiana, of which I'm running for United States Senator and Governor, as displayed here. Anyway, I know that's random. But so there is the parish of Livingston. There is the town of Livingston, which is out in Livingston Parish. And then there is a Camp Livingston located around Alexandria, around the Rapides Parish area. Where are you exactly?
So when they abduct us, they don't tell us anything. I have seen pictures of a base. My friend actually pulled up pictures of one of the bases in the Camp Livingston area from what they told me. But as soon as I saw that base, I started crying. The energies of it, everything were completely what I remember. So, and I've never tried to Skype it because I didn't even know where it was. I just knew that it was Camp Livingston because that's what I heard, a lot of the people around me who were in charge call it. So I know it's in the state of Louisiana somewhere.
Yeah, it's about an hour north of me from what I can gather. It's out in the pine trees in the part of the state.
They say that it's an abandoned base. It looks kind of run down, but Google Earth isn't always accurate.
Like concrete slabs where there used to be anchors for some sort of foundation, based on what I can find on Google Earth. But I don't know how to get access to go over there and double check unless I flew a drone or something. Also, I have two random questions that are kind of outside the scope of the SSP.
Sure.
Do you have a normal day job, and what state do you live in? I was just wondering.
Well, when I'm stuck up here, I am supposedly a U.S. citizen. So I have to work like everybody else. Right now, I am working for a group that's called Galaxy of Unity. We are a new talk show, and I am their host. And I also, other than that, I kind of just stay at home, but I also am training service dogs right now as well.
Okay, so the training of service dogs is how you pay the bills.
Well, they're my service dogs, so.
Oh, okay.
But as for paying bills, I technically have issues working. I have issues holding a job. I am very targeted. So I pretty much live with a group of friends right now that has been very kind and gracious to me.
Okay, so it helps you split up all of the money that has to go out. Okay, cool. Now, I live in the state of Louisiana. Daniel Sala's out in Romania. Where are your two time zones? Were you out in California or something?
No, I'm actually in the state of Montana.
Oh, okay. Okay. Nice. Okay, also, let's see. I had a whole bunch of stuff I wrote. Okay, so you said you've been to the prehistoric era and you saw dinosaurs. What the hell was that like? Did you ever kill and eat any of them?
No, we literally were just searching for an item, and it only took us the max of 3 hours to find the item because we ended up teleporting close to where we're going. And so we only really had 3 hours to kind of wander around one area. The dinosaurs were very interesting. I love them. They're very cool.
Yeah, it'd be cool to make some boots or something out of T-Rex. One more question, then I'll throw it back to Daniel, and then I'll pick back up in a couple minutes. Okay, so tell me what you know about sacred geometry and the architecture of five. Is that what you were saying? If I heard correctly?
So in my studies 3 years ago, I ended up sitting down and just focusing on my knowledge work. I am technically a priestess, so it's part of my life path to study everything pretty much. So I started studying sacred geometry,
Okay.
and I started with the platonic solids and started working my way up from there. I watched a couple of videos on YouTube, and things just weren't setting into place all the way because I have knowledge from astral traveling, and I have been working on trying to get knowledge that I have from working with other dimensions, from the projects and other planes, to write down the physics of how it can possibly be. And the sacred geometry I knew was the key to that. What I know about sacred geometry, I went from the platonic solids all the way up to I now understand how most physics work on a higher dimension. But because of the veil here, it can be very hard. But as soon as you start understanding phi, which is the natural laws of physics and everything, and even how energy manipulation works and how your DNA is, things can actually be put into place pretty easily. But it can also be very dangerous as well, knowing that knowledge. So I can understand why it's very coveted.
The number five, what's the significance of five?
5, like the number 5?
Am I hearing you correctly? The architecture of five in the past year?
Oh, no, it's phi, PHI.
Phi, you see, I don't know any better, and I should have had my closed captions on. Okay, forgive me.
You're all right.
Please take it away with something more logic.
No worries. And so you brought up dimensions, and I guess the veil is what keeps us in like 3D. And do you have any idea if this refers to density or dimension? I know it's a kind of a deep one.
So the veil is actually a technology that is around Earth dimensionally. There are towers placed around Earth, and many people have been trying to get it down because we want to be ourselves. We want to have our abilities. It is a technology that keeps the planet at a certain frequency cap. So like the Tibetan monks and everything, they can levitate, but it takes a lot of energy to do so because the veil is actually keeping the planet at a certain energy level. If prana was able to just be in this planet the way that it used to be before the 5th era of man, everybody would look different, the planet would be a lot healthier, but it's part of the seed experiment.
Yeah,
or at least this experiment.
It has its own perks, I heard.
Yeah.
But you also mentioned that you traveled not just in 3D, but 4, 5, and even 6. And could you name some of the biggest differences between these?
Well, everything looks a little bit smoother. The dimensions have a lot more prana to them. Prana is basically like ether, tachyon, chi energy, whatever you want to call it. There are many names for it. So the physics there are different depending on what dimension you were in. Like you might be able to breathe in outer space. You might be able to, there might be more colors than exist here in this dimension because things are vibrating on different frequencies. There's more frequencies to vibrate at. Your abilities could also change as well, depending how your quanta is for your soul and your body that you have going to those dimensions.
And how much of your SSP experience happened in higher dimensions?
Let's see. I know for a fact that the Nazi Aryans had us go to different dimensions to do missions. We took a crystal train. This train was literally made out of crystal. It was very sentient. There is a little girl who pilots that train. She is a prisoner. And they use her quanta, they use her consciousness to actually govern between the dimensions that they take us to. and we use that to go to those dimensions.
Right, and she has a horn, right?
Yeah, she's got like a little horn right here. It's very adorable. I want to free her so bad, but contracts really suck. So
Yeah, one day. But
Where does this come from?
I don't know where she came from, to be honest. Like, she has like the deepest purple eyes, and she's got like very pearlescent skin and very pearlescent like hair that's got like a sheen to it. She looks like she's only 12.
How does a
Very young.
12-year-old get involved in some sort of forever eternal contract of piloting this train?
Slavery. Slavery is still out there in this universe and several of the dimensions, unfortunately. So whether it be a life debt of slavery from them, not killing you because you did something stupid, or war, being a basically a war trophy, or just them coming and taking you and you not having the ability to do anything.
And regarding these shifts in dimension, do you have to be bumped up? Like we hear from the one whistleblower, Daryl James, who said that you have density chambers that bump you up artificially to a certain density. Have you gone through something like this?
Only if I'm using like clone bodies that are not perfect, or hybrid bodies for just being avatars. Because my quanta is very high, I don't usually have a problem of having my bodies that are 2 of my original DNA be jumped up. I can just go there. But anything like the body I'm in right now, I would definitely have to be in the chambers. And they're just kind of like spherical or cylinder shaped. It really just depends on who is putting you in them. But and then they use the frequency chambers to end up adjusting your bodies to that frequency, so you don't either explode or your atoms don't go everywhere.
Cool. Well, you're the first to corroborate him, so that's pretty neat. But you also mentioned that you were put in ET avatar bodies. You were usually put in your avatar bodies that matched you, but sometimes in ET bodies. And could you say what the advantages and disadvantages were, and what did they feel like?
So it really depended on the species. Again, not every soul is going to be crammed into a body and be okay with it because of their quanta and because of the DNA of the body. The 5th era of man that is now is a very marvelous scientific breakthrough when it comes to ET science out there, because almost any soul could be put into a 5th era of man body. For me and a few other people, it's very hard for us to be in human bodies of like the 4th era and under, because we break them down too much. For certain ETs, I seem to be okay. There is a lot of hybridization that goes on in any of the bodies that they put us in, because they do want that super soldier effect. They want to take the best out of certain species and cram it together. Sometimes it's successful and sometimes it's not successful. So it hurts no matter, like if I'm body jumping, they usually take my actual consciousness and my soul and cram it into a body. Because I don't like doing that a whole lot, if I'm doing an avatar body, they'll put a dimensional augment in me and an augment in the avatar body, or they'll take a soul shard and put it in there so that I can control it a lot easier, especially if they don't want to be traced. So if I'm doing the soul fragment, then it is not really all that painful, because I'm just kind of there but not really there. And the augment is, well, not really all that painful, because I'm just hooked up to the nervous system and the conscious linking, and then I can just wander around and do whatever I want. I mean, you still feel, smell, hear, have all the senses of the bodies that you're either avataring in or are in. So it can get pretty interesting. I've been in bodies that had 4 arms. I've been in bodies that have 2 arms. I've been in bodies that, are cat-like, draconian, a hybrid of some of the mantis slash, you know, humanoid. I would say I wouldn't even be able to tell you what that one was. So it can get kind of interesting. You have to actually, when you get downloaded, you know, for the neuron links, you have to take some time to get used to your avatar. It's not like, oh, you just know everything about your body on how it moves and the reflexes and the function. So you do a little bit of training before you go out there, usually about the flight over, or they'll do training for about 30 minutes or so before they even ship you out. Because it varies person to person. Like me, I can get DNA memories decently quickly, so I adjust pretty quickly.
Interesting. And the factions that are doing this, have you noticed whether they're all beholden to ET masters, or are some of them just humans?
For
the factions, like do they all owe servitude to ETs, or some of them independent of ETs?
Some of them are dependent of ETs, like certain factions that I'm with, because I'm with several of them. Well, I guess it would depend on what you consider human in the first place. But if we're talking Earth-based, I do belong to some Earth-based factions. A lot of them are ET military, and some of them are private groups. Excuse me. I do consider the ICC more human because they did start here, from what I have heard, but there is more like Aryan and human controlling in that group than other ETs, even though they do have high-ranking ETs in their group as well.
And we're talking about the same Aryan that you saw at Camp Livingston, right?
Yes. Yeah, the Nazi Aryans.
And could you tell their height? Because if they're our height, then it doesn't sound like Anunnaki. So, but if they are about our height, they might be Pleiadian, or tall whites are also about our height, but it depends. You said they were blonde, right?
Yeah, they had blonde hair, blue eyes. Some of them had brown hair and green eyes, though, but those were the ones that were walking around. One of my officers, Lilith, was a brown-haired, green-eyed officer. She is Aryan, and she does work for the Nazi ETs, for the Aryan organization. But the majority of everyone else on base is usually blonde-haired and blue-eyed, and they can range from 6 feet all the way up to, I would say, like 7.5, depending. More of the tall ones are out in space, though, or in the inner Earth.
At least by the description, that kind of sounds like exactly like Pleiadians, but I can't say for sure. But they were definitely pure ET and not hybrid, right?
Lilith might be in a little bit of a hybridization. Why am I having such a hard time with that word today? But most of the other ones that I have interacted with are definitely purebloods or close to.
And do they originate off Earth or from inner Earth? Do you know?
That they did not tell me.
Okay. And I guess they were highly psychic, right?
Yes, very much so. It did not take much of any emotional disturbances for them to shock us most of the time. So.
And did they speak telepathically or verbally or both?
They did both.
Right. And you mentioned that at Cape Livingston you managed to get out of your shock collars, and can you remember how you managed that?
It's called phasing. It's basically where you make yourself incorporeal, which is you vibrate yourself to another dimension, and it allows you to be ghost-like, basically. I can only do it for a couple seconds, especially when I have the shock collars on, because they do suppress our abilities. So most of the time when I gotta get out of my gear on base is through phasing.
That's something I haven't heard before, so it makes total sense. And Also at Cape Livingston, what was the purpose of them shutting down all your psionic abilities when fighting those ETs?
So I asked them this too, because I did meet up with one of the ICC head organization members, because I had a lot to say and I was trying to buy my DNA contracts. I do have credits off world, but and I asked him the same question. I was like, why did you guys do this? He's like, we wanted you to be perfect. You guys are in the Child of God project. So we wanted you to be absolutely perfect. By being able to fight things, to open up your mind, open up your reality, which basically translates as you need to learn how to adapt to situations you don't have control of. So
Right.
they wanted us to find other methods of boosting our abilities, learning how to hack around things for our abilities. Again, how I learned to control my avatars and control my soul shards because of their training. They made us think on a completely different level, and they did not stop until you got it. I was actually in the training program a lot longer than most people who I went in with.
Interesting. And why do factions alternate between abducting you sometimes physically and sometimes just your consciousness?
I guess it really depends on who has me slotted for that day for scheduling. I can't tell you.
Right. And you said you managed to get suspended from the SSP, but does that mean you were inactive, or that you got better memory wipes or something? Because it seems like there's no escaping SSP.
So when I was 12 and a half, I ended up actually getting the group together in Section 13 because none of us were happy. We were controlled by the cabal. They were torturing us, barely feeding us, making us run through the dirt. And I got sick of it, and I don't behave myself. So I actually incited a riot and ended up killing 3 of the high members, who actually ended up raping me as a child and a couple other girls as well, and probably even more. But when they were doing that to me, there was 3 other girls in the room with me, and they were just completely being brutal. I had no remorse to them. I had no problem of completely just annihilating them.
And switching to Section 13, are those missions still ongoing for you?
Yes.
And you said that things changed for the better in 2016 once Trump got in office. And did you hear that from their mouths? Like it was his doing that triggered it?
So probably gonna be a breaching protocol. I don't care. No, Trump actually came to Section 13. Section 13 is literally in Area 51's general mountain range area. So him being president, he had to come check out everything, and he told us, he was like, I'm going to make things better for you. He started firing everybody. We got new management. The shot collars came off. We still have our disciplinary devices, which took me a while to figure out what it was, and it's actually one of our augments that every SSP has from Section 13. It's actually in our pituitary gland, but the collars came off, so it was kind of a little hidden trick thing. But we started doing shifts instead of being pulled every night to go do missions, and our training abilities got better because we weren't getting forced into a lot of stuff. They weren't hounding us as much. And they actually started carrying like our new med teams, and we even got a psychologist on our team now over there, which is new. Like they didn't give 2 craps about our psychology of what trauma we're going through. A lot of things improved and changed for us. Are we getting a paycheck? Not that I'm aware of, or at least I haven't received money from anything. It would be nice though. I don't even want to know the back pay on that from 5.5 years old up. But things changed a lot, and things changed again when Biden came into office. So, and not for the better.
Oh, that's sad. But you said that both Section 13 and Project Ashwet were joint efforts of the Dark Fleet and the ICC. Is that true?
So Section 13 is a like hub system almost for a lot of different factions. The ICC had their hands in it. The U.S. government had their hands in it. The Nazi Aryans had their hands in it. Some of the Dracos had their hands in it. And this was all ran like by the cabal at this time. They ended up, when Section 13 had Trump come in, they ended up dropping a lot of these people. So I am now dealing with the Aryans on a completely like on their own, and some of the Draco factions on their own as well.
I see. Were there many nationalities in the ICC?
Yes.
No,
You mean nationalities of Earth or nationalities of outer space, or both?
Well, Earth, because yeah, there were aliens. I was gonna get to the ETs too. Like, what were the main ETs involved with ICC actually? Yeah.
For the ICC, just about
Yes.
everything underneath the sun. They might have been founded by, you know, some of the people here and whatnot, but they have branched off. They are literally like traders, and I mean traders as in goods, scientists, merchants, mining, anything that you could possibly think of. These guys almost have their hands in. So they have so many species that come in and actually join them. A lot of the scientists that ended up working on a lot of the projects are like Pleiadians, Aryans, the Draconians, and Draco. Some of the Andromedan species are also in there. So it's more of this neutral trading area now than just, you know, the ICC being completely evil. I mean, all high corporations are kind of evil if you ask me, but you know, everyone has their ties in, but they have a lot of people involved. I was actually kind of shocked when I actually got to go to one of the ICC bases, because I had to talk to my superior who owned my DNA contracts for the Aryans. But there was a lot of people there.
And I guess the common thread between them, what drives them all, is the search for more advanced tech, right?
Yeah, I would say so. I can't speak for them, but I would assume from the things that I have seen over there in their headquarters, in one of their headquarters.
Right. And how many ICC self-sufficient colonies would you estimate are out there?
I have no idea. I couldn't honestly give you an answer to that because I don't know.
Right. And we also hear that they do a kind of unspeakable act. I don't know if you can confirm this, ICC, that they capture the asset souls when they die on Earth, and then they rebody them for further use in space. Do you know anything about that?
I don't know anything about that for the ICC standpoint. I do know that the Dark Draco factions were doing that illegally, of course, because if they don't own any DNA contracts down here or soul contracts, then they don't have the right. Nobody has the right to collect souls except for like reapers and that sort of stuff. So for the reincarnation cycles and whatnot. The only time that anyone can collect a soul without going through the reincarnation cycle is by a soul contract. If your soul, I guess if you have like a star family or something and you're like, hey, when I die, my soul needs to come back to you guys, you sign it before you get here. You know, there's a lot of illegal technology that has been used on Earth, and Earth has been looked at for the last 4 or 5 years by the higher councils that are governing the, you know, bigger councils of this universe, because there are things going on here that were never supposed to happen. And even though this is a starseed experimental planet, there are still rules that the governing seed councils who started the project have to go by source. So
I see. Yeah. And you also said that child trafficking rescue missions were happening at one point. And what faction did that, and what did one look like?
I cannot tell you what faction did those. That would be breaking my contracts and also putting them into the spotlight, which I don't want to do. What did it look like? Not good. I've been on several of the missions. I can't say by which factions, but I've been on entire motherships that have had not just children, but teenagers and adults and being shipped off to God knows where. And, you know, my group and I had to go in and completely take out a good quarter of the crew and get these people out of there so that they can go to a better place. You know, some of them weren't even returned to Earth because some of them didn't even come from Earth. The human slave trade, they say humans, but there's more than humans that are actually being trafficked. There's other species as well. And these people can come from anywhere in the galaxy, not just Earth.
True, yes.
If you don't mind me asking, what species are also being trafficked? Stuff that's sentient as well?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes you get animals from other planets being trafficked illegally, but more or less that we're more worried about humanoids. So, and when I mean humanoids, I mean like from avians to reptilians to amphibians to humanoid for, you know, you guys. So any of those and anything in between is what we would call human trafficking.
Well, what other planets, do you know the names of them offhand that these sentient humanoid beings are being plucked from? What solar systems?
It would even be so much planets. Planets do get raided occasionally, especially during times of war. I know the Dark Dracos were raiding nearby planets, and even some of their planets and moons that they had owned. They were just taking people to use them as cannon fodder, basically. So, you know, and each species has certain perks to their biology that can be favorable to some, you know, either for the hybrid programs or anything like that. So, I mean, it's not okay. None of it is okay. No one deserves to be taken from their families or their planets or anything like that. But we're talking, you know, ships getting intercepted and completely raided and the people stripped and put into the slave trade programs as well. So just because it's on a planet doesn't mean it's safe either.
You're saying it's just the Dark Dracos that do this?
No, but the Dark Dracos are ones that I know for a fact that have been doing it. A lot of the ships that I ended up raiding for the last, well, I can't really give a time frame, that'd be breaking contracts, but have had them on there. And I've actually been part of the human slave trade as a kid as well. When Section 13 found me too unruly, they put me in a crate and shipped me to the Mars base, and there was human slave trading going on there. I've also been put on a planet that had like thousands of cages of teenagers and children and some adults as well.
What is this?
I don't know where that was. I have no clue. They knocked me out and I woke up in a cage over there.
A warehouse of just caged people?
No, it's not in a warehouse. It was like a desert area, and there was like huge like blanket tarps and stuff to cover some of them, and there was like boards and everything. Huh?
Like an open air prison?
Yeah, kind of. But it was just, it was kind of like this weird built-in walled area of all these cages lined up and stacked on each other, and then they had like boards that you would have to walk to go to some of the areas. It was very low maintenance, but they had draconian guards there and some other reptilian species as well. But you would see people come in, like point to the cages. They would bring the people out of the cages and the kids, and then they would put them in shackles and then just walk off. So I managed to end up breaking out of there with a few other people, and then I just used one of my teleports for opening portals to get the heck out of there, because I wasn't looking back at all.
Okay.
The place was horrible.
These races that go around enslaving You know, like, are there any other races that are higher than them that will bust up on them and kick their ass and put them in cages? Like, does anyone give these Dark Dracos anything like that a reality check? Is there something?
So it's kind of weird for the power struggle here, because a lot of some of the Dark Draco higher ups, the ones that actually have wings and can shapeshift, they actually came from a different universe. Sorry. And so their coding is a lot higher than the majority of the species down here.
What do you mean coding?
So every universe has its own source coding. And if it's from a higher dimension and they come over here, they get to keep that coding, which means that their physics and abilities are going to be a lot greater than the ones who were created over here.
Okay, I'm trying to understand that. Can you
I'm sorry.
refine the scope of that?
Huh?
Can you refine the scope of that? What do you mean by that?
Let's see here.
And do these other universes have names?
Yes, but I don't really know them all.
What's the name of this universe?
That's a good question.
Okay.
Names are really hard for me because people don't understand that most of the time it's in a completely different frequency language. So sometimes it's, even if I said it in English, it wouldn't be the actual pronunciation of it, because like my actual species talks in like frequency, pitches, and tones. There is no actual spoken, it doesn't sound like this. It doesn't sound like anything like this. It would be more of a, between a harp playing and a bird chirping. It would be the easiest, way to describe anything.
Well, we need to get you a record deal. Anyway, Daniel, I'll pass the torch back to you. Sorry.
Cool. And on a lighter note, I heard you say that you actually went to a movie in a human colony in space. And
remember that? That was. Go ahead. I'm excited about this. Yes.
Because what was the movie experience like?
It was okay. So here on Earth, a lot of our senses are completely limited, especially mine. I have synesthesia naturally,
Was it?
Huh?
It wasn't rated R, was it?
No.
This is a kid-friendly show. No, I'm joking. That was so cheesy. So the movie theater.
Oh my goodness. Oh, that's great though.
You get the gummy worms that were sour.
No, literally, like they have movie theaters up there, and it was so bizarre of an experience for me because I got to act like a citizen for once instead of being a soldier, going to this movie theater. And it was on one of the planets, and the architecture was like really pretty. There was like I remember like flowing satiny curtains, and the architecture was almost kind of like between like French and Roman. Like it was really interesting, and the seats were really comfortable because they, you can lean back all the way, and it's so weird. But like when you have all your senses up there, and it might just be me, okay, because I've been in a lot of bodies and whatnot, but I've only ever watched movies in one of my originals. So, but they, like for me down here, TV is very flat. It's very, doesn't matter really what I'm watching. There's no emotion to it. It's very, like I'm just watching cardboard. Up there though, you can feel all of the actors, you can feel the environment, you basically are like super self-immersed in the show, without having any technology or anything like that, like on your face or like the 3D stuff. It's completely different. And it was this movie about this one lady, and she was like one of the taller ladies. She was very pretty, and there was all sorts of species in the movie because they're not just limited to one. But she was like sad that her lover was going off to this one area for exploration and whatnot. And I remember specifically the scene where she is on this planet and she's like hunched over. She's got like pretty much tattered clothes on, and because her ship crashed, and she was just crying, and I was like holding both of my companions' hands that took me to the movie theater. I was just crying, and they're looking at me like, "Are you okay?"
With you, obviously.
But it was very, like, you could feel the emotions from all the actors in the movie, and just feel everything that was going on in the movie. And I don't really get that a whole lot here on Earth, and so maybe it was just me being overwhelmed with my senses, but
Well, where's the intergalactic equivalent of Hollywood?
I honestly don't know. That would be interesting to find, because
Same corporations here on this Earth, like Paramount and Fox and all this stuff, that you get the same, I guess, logos and insignia before the movie starts.
No, not really. Like they had like the name of the company. That was about it. There wasn't, and like the credits at like the end, which was interesting, but it was all in so everything that the movie was in what they call common. It's a trader's language out in space. And
Common?
they had subtitles.
Wait, common? That's what it's called?
Well, I call it common.
Oh.
I call it common because at almost every planet, anyone who is not like in the backwaters of some planet that's never visited knows this language. And they had subtitles down below as well in the common traders language as well.
Yeah, I can see how there's no going back to our stilted little movies after that. But did they also have other forms of escapism? Like I'm really curious if you have ever seen the video games out in space.
Yeah, they do have some games. It's not quite like the ones down here. They do have like some of the tech stuff because we use it in SSP as well for some of the training modules. So, and I'm not sure which one came first, but there has been a few video game type stuff out there. I haven't had the ability to play any of it, but
Well, that sucks.
yeah, I've just seen people play it, but I haven't actually, except for for like Section 13 and some of the other groups that I'm in. They do put it on us, and it's kind of like one of those simulation things, so, but it's to help us train without actually dying or getting hurt.
If you don't mind, I want to ask you about the super soldier suits. Like, how much did they facilitate movement, and how much did they augment your strength?
They haven't really augmented my strength unless it was genetically, except for the serums that they give us. We get, well, in Section 13, we get a vial about this big of cobalt blue serum that was made by Emery Smith. And they also give us an orange vial as well. The blue vial ends up enhancing all of our memory functions. If we have suppression shots from whether what they gave us, like I had suppression shots from Inner Earth because my powers were getting too unruly here. I was having a hard time controlling them because of the veil. So they ended up giving me suppression shots several times throughout my life, and this shot will actually reverse it violently. I pretty much seize out, I throw up, I get dizzy, my body feels like it's on fire. So, but in battle, like we get one before battle, and then we have vials that we can take sometimes depending on the mission if they feel like we need it. We will have them with us for, if we're going to be out there longer or whatever, we can inject ourselves with it for an extra boost. It pretty much just makes your brain work like 120 to 110% fully functional. So your abilities, your senses, everything are super heightened. The orange vial is what I like to call berserker juice. And it shuts off all of your inhibitors. So if you're on a suicide mission or you don't think you're going to make it out, you hit yourself with one of those, you turn around and pretty much let your team get a head start. But you ain't coming back very often.
Yeah, you're immune to pain. How damaged can you be in a battle and still be healed by a medbed? Is there like a limit?
As long as they have some sort of cellular structure, depending on the medbed, not every medbed is super advanced. The older medbeds do not have the 3D printing technology. They only have the ability to heal certain things. They don't usually have the like soul forge technology. It's basically a scanner that brings your astral body like above you or on the screen. And so like the higher ones, like they have a dome screen around you, and all they have to do is touch it, and the frequencies will heal you. If you're missing limbs, and they feel like it would be better for them to 3D print the genetics, then they can do that, especially if the genetics are unstable to begin with. Because if you try to use the frequencies to heal the genetics on its own, because every DNA has your building blocks of your structure, your form, you know, everything else, then they can use those frequencies to activate that. But the problem is that usually you'll grow a new body instead of just, you know, your arm. Right. So they use the 3D printer for that part. And then like if you're just a cell, they can throw you in there and then they can pretty much do the whole body. It's interesting. You know, so, and then let's see what else for those. The middle ones are not so bad either. Like any medbed is better than not having one at all. It replaces just about every equipment in the hospital. Your x-rays, your CAT scans, your MRIs, surgical equipment, everything, because it's all done. Like if you have to remove shrapnel, they've got like little robot arms that can do that, or they can do the surgeon can do it itself. But to heal any internal bleeding and everything, they just throw you in there, hit the frequency of the specific frequency of your blood vessels, and it will use the body's DNA mapping to actually repair everything to pretty much perfectness. You don't get any scars or anything. So
yeah, amazing. And this I've heard from one source, but can you confirm whether medbeds also heal psychological trauma?
The more advanced ones can, yes. The older ones, not so much. So the newer ones can actually heal your astral body as well if your astral body is damaged, because just because your physical one is doesn't mean your astral isn't. And sometimes when you're out there fighting, depending on what abilities are used, it can injure your astral and your physical body. So they had to come up with new medbeds to actually heal both. You know, the psychological trauma, I don't use that one on me very often, but you know, maybe because they're like, oh, mind wiping will just fix everything, but it doesn't. So I have only seen that used a couple times on people, but I haven't really experienced it, so I couldn't tell you how that feels.
Right. And while we're on the subject of advanced tech, have you ever gotten a download of information like a whole university's worth in one session? And if you did, then can you tell what's different what's the difference between that and the normal acquired learning?
Yes, I have had downloads before. Depending on what's being downloaded, it can be pretty painful. Especially, I've had it several times in several different ways. One of them, I actually tapped into like source consciousness of the planet and started getting downloads when I was a teenager. And this is during my time of quiet, but I started getting like all these mathematics and a whole bunch of like schematics and just all this imagery downloaded into me. And I actually got energy poisoning from it because it was so powerful. You know, my body just didn't know what to do with it. And it took me a few days to kind of let my brain just kind of let it do its thing, because the more I fought it, the more it hurt. I didn't really retain a whole lot from that download though, which was really sad. And then the second time was brain work. hang on. The second time was when I ended up, I was on a mission to find certain technologies from the ET. Sorry, I have someone standing next to me dimensionally, and they're kind of making my brain fog. But I looked into it because they were trying to figure out how it works. And you actually had to look into this crystalline, it was like a crystalline disc almost with engravings on the top. And you had to actually, and it had like this, it went like this. And then it had a little spot right here. And you actually had to put that spot to your third eye to activate it. But it had very old coding in it. And it downloaded a whole bunch of stuff to my brain, but it was so old that the coding in there kind of messed with my augments a little bit. That one definitely hurt for a little bit, but it was cool and it was interesting. It was like this holographic, pretty much like, welcome to this, and here's how this works, and started, giving me schematics of how technology works and what they were doing. And it was pretty cool, but I got in trouble for that because they had to fix my augment.
Yeah, it's too bad we don't have access to that type of thing. I mean, maybe in Earth, but you also, something that stuck with me is that you mentioned that you were looking forward to when the iPads launched. You were looking forward to like having the Atlantean type of tablets that you remembered, and they were nothing like that. And would you can you comment about how those actually control the Atlantean types?
Yeah, so the touch screens were, and it's not even just Atlantis. Out in outer space, they have tablets there too. Your wristbands on the decks of the ships. Yeah, so I was really disappointed on when they came out because I'm sitting here and the touch screen was disappointing and the AI was very disappointing, but I was expecting too much.
No, I agree.
Like for Atlantean technology, a lot of it was crystal tech. The street lights that ran across the ground, that were completely flush with the sidewalks, even out in outer space, depending on what ET faction that you're working with, because not every ET faction has the best of the best technology. If you don't know how to work it, you don't get it. That's the rules, and that also gets broken. But so you could have really bad technology or really good technology depending. And the interface just works so much differently. Like you could, we'll say like the Chakrel technology, all you have to do is, either touch it if you don't have the brain augment to control it, via thought. But theirs actually is holographic for the touch screen, and it actually has quanta sensitivity. So if your quanta is messing with it, it will actually do its thing. And then of course it's got its AI chip down below and stuff. So, but for the difference of Atlantean technology, it was all crystal tech with the AI running into it. So it's kind of like what we have now for the tablets, only like 1,000 times smarter for the AI.
And back to the learning issue, it's not just that, it's also the fact that our languages are kind of limited in that they don't convey a lot of information as compared to the ET languages. Those are much more compact. Am I right?
Well, it's not even just the spoken, because humans have lost their harmonic ability, and with the frequencies and stuff, like every emotion has a frequency. Not only have humans lost the ability to speak language-wise for their frequency, but they've also lost the ability to speak with their emotions. They're only talking usually with this, so they've lost what people would actually call light language. And I can go into the scientific aspects of what light language actually is, but I don't know if many people would understand it. But if people want to, they're more than welcome to ask me. So language has to do with a lot of harmonics and mathematics. Like the Atlantean language, if you spoke it properly, you could make the wind blow, you could create fire, you could, you know, create water, because it's all about the frequency. Like if you say water, you're actually speaking the frequency of water, and water will start to create. So it's very complicated. The Aryans, the Octurians, I was going to say Andromedans, but that wasn't correct. You know, their languages are a lot of light language. They do have spoken language, which is very mathematical for how they pronounce everything. But it is also, they also speak to you through emotion. And they are very reserved, both of them, when it comes to speaking. So they hold back a little bit of emotion, but they're still projecting to you everything that they want to talk to you or convey.
Cool. And I heard that the Greys are the masters at condensing the language. They can have 20 pages worth of information in the symbol the size of a coin. But what were some of the most devastating psionics that you used in combat?
Sorry.
Pretty random, I know.
Let's see, psionics. Are we just talking about abilities in general, or are we just talking like abilities of mentality?
Some that doesn't depend on physical, just your mind.
Telekinesis, I have psychokinesis. You can create lightning if I really want to. They call me Epsilon Queen for a reason. I'll let you figure that one out. So, what else? Phasing, I guess, because I can raise the dimensions and phase through objects. I don't have to really touch anything for that, but it's handy if something's trying to come towards me. If I put my energy into something, I can end up manipulating a person's body, not just my own, but something else. Like if a leech grabs onto me, or if someone actually stabs me, I can just throw my blood at them. That one's fun.
Well, and I heard you could, using tech, you can petrify people with like a sword.
So the way that the human body actually works with the piezoelectric abilities, it takes certain frequency weapons and a large amount of energy, but it can actually crystallize people, yes. And I'm not talking like you're going to look like a magnificent clear quartz crystal. You will probably, well, depending on the species and their components, it would depend on species. I've seen draconians, some mantoids, and humanoids end up being crystallized, not by the stuff that we have, but by other equipment. And they turn completely different colors because of their genetic makeup. But the majority of them is usually a dark black with subvariance colors in it.
And can you confirm if lightsabers are also real?
I have not seen too many of them, but I have seen two.
Okay, so
I don't know who made them, and I've only recently, let's see, the last time I saw it was the first time that I got body hopped that I know of, so that was 4 years ago. It was the first time I've ever ran into one on a mission, and I was confused beyond all reason, let me tell you.
Okay, well, do they have a species that looks like Baby Yoda at all? Is that like self-disclosure?
I have not seen any, but that doesn't mean that they don't exist.
I was just wondering.
Like, even when I go to the galactic councils and stuff, there's millions of species there, all right? And you're talking about seeing something the size of a moon on the inside. So I have not, but or at least not that I remember.
Okay. The lightsabers made me think about that.
Maybe one day.
And you said that you can create portals with your mind. And what does it take to do that? What do you have to think about?
You have to know the physics of it. And I started understanding the physics because as part of Project Stargate, we were the team, or I can't say team, we were the cannon fodder that they like to throw through the Stargate when they got coordinates and they didn't know it was on the other side. So going through that, it manipulates your energy field, and it has its own energy field. And so one of my gifts is mimicking. And I started to, it took me years, but I started to learn how to mimic and figure out the physics of those portals. Am I perfect with it? I am still not perfect with it. I accidentally I parallel time jumped me and 3 of my other teammates running from a mission that we had failed. So not perfect.
And so these were the experimental portals that you did under Project Crest, right?
Yes.
And have you ever gotten lost yourself in one?
Yes.
And what happened to that shard or whatever?
Well, if the physics of the stream that you're traveling through becomes unstable, you kind of get lost, and your physics get really messed up with it. It hasn't happened very often. It learned very quickly, so that you have to make, it's like any UFO traveling at light speed or using what they would call warping. You have to get your electromagnetic field around your body like super stable. So if that field stops, you can dimension phase into wherever it is that you need to. It's very difficult though.
Cool. And Xan mentioned that mission you had to go back in prehistory during the dinosaurs. And I think that was to retrieve some artifact. And was that mission successful? And what did you retrieve?
The mission was successful.
And do you remember what was the object?
I cannot say. I'm sorry.
I see. No worries. And have you heard whether the Draco own this part of the galaxy and the entire solar system, and they're just leasing it out to us, and we can't really get rid of them for that reason?
From what I understood in their archives, I did do some research trying to figure out why the super galactic war happened. So I went to the Andromeda galaxy for the Aryans, the I think Octurians, thank you. And I've also talked to the Dark Draco factions as well, and they granted me permission to look at their archives. I don't know how much of it was fudged or faked, because you can't really out of my dealings with having to deal with them my entire life and them treating me like crap, I was taking things with a grain of salt from them. But they allowed me because I was there as an emissary for a council. So it's not like they really could hurt me at that time, because I was acting as an emissary and not their experiment. And from my understanding of findings on a whole bunch of people's side, this area was supposed to be 100% out in the way zone. Nobody owned it at the time. And a couple ships of the Dracos had ended up coming over here, but they lost control of the ships and crashed on the planet. Technically, I guess they decided to say that was ownership, because they did end up leaving, and then, this place was completely deserted, or the files say, the Andromeda files say that the place was deserted. The Draconian files say that they had some civilizations that went underground and started living there. So, and then by the time this planet started getting into the, colonization and everything else, the Draconians are like, we still own this, and they're like, we don't show any evidence of you guys owning this. So people just didn't really claim it fully. I don't know if there was paperwork that was supposed to be filed with that for the galactic councils that never got through. I don't know. It's just kind of this huge jumble thing, and they've been fighting over it ever since, which I think is pretty childish if you ask me. But
you would think they would have the technology to go back and have a 2020 view of history, which would settle this whole dispute. I don't know why they still quibble, but I feel go ahead.
ETs are not perfect. Okay, they might practice, some of them might practice love and light and other things, but they always have other motives as well. So yeah, they could totally go and check it out. Are they still going to say, well, you didn't file the paperwork, or you guys weren't technically here. You know, I've met some pretty jerkish Andromedans, so I can't judge by species.
No, that's perfect. Yeah. And what was the most powerful ET adversary that you've encountered?
I would have to say, let's see, most powerful.
That gave you the most problems?
Are we saying ET in general, or just anything that someone has created?
Oh, I didn't know that was a part of the equation. Oh yeah, anything.
I would have to say it was in another timeline, and I can't go into full detail, but they were like squid-like bodies with just a generic ET, not ET, like humanoid face, and they were actually created by one of the creator races, and it went completely haywire. The AI totally malfunctioned, evolved on its own, and pretty much wiped out all of everything. So I ended up time jumping from that one. I don't know who time jumped me or why I got time jumped, but I'm grateful because that one sucked and I hope it collapsed. But that was like my greatest enemy. Anything that I've encountered in this time area, that's hard because there's a lot of creatures out there. Like draconian drones are no joke. And I mean like the huge hulking monsters that they create as their basically their battle tanks. They're no joke. They're powerful. Draconians are pretty powerful, but I fought worse. So I mean they're a pretty good matchup for me.
What's the baddest thing out there? Like what's the rancor of?
Well, if we're just going for this universe, I would have to say like between the Shakral and one of the other races from another universe, they're pretty bad. I don't remember their name. They're just huge hulking creatures of, I don't even know what the heck they're made out of. They're kind of like jelly slimes because you can't really do much damage to them, and I've only encountered them a few times, and I don't want to again because they absorb everything, all the energy that I throw at them. So I've only encountered them a few times and I don't want to do it again. I didn't know how to actually defeat them, so I just kind of got out of there. Okay,
what kind of life forms are older than this galaxy?
That was exactly what I was gonna ask.
Get the fuck out of here. I just have a couple questions. Yeah, wow.
What kind of life forms are older than this galaxy?
You said you met them. What are they like?
Arrogant, pompous. You know, they have a god complex, most of them. Huh?
What form do they take? Tell me all about them.
Okay, so it really depends if older than this galaxy or this universe. Because if we're talking about entities that are just born here, like the Aryans are a very old race. They're actually one of the creator races of this universe, along with some of the Kuite and a couple other people. One of the avian races, but it's not the Chixari. It's like their ancestors. The Chixari are like the bird-like people that everyone sees, but their ancestors are not blue. They're like a golden color. For out of this universe, there's quite a bit. There's always humanoids, always reptilian types, bird types. It seems to be like this. They seem to be like one of the like master blueprints. It's for what I've seen.
And have you ever met a human time traveler from the distant future that could give us a glimpse as to how we'll look in the future?
A distant time traveler who can tell you what you look like in the future. Well, it depends on how far in the future.
Any stretch, really. 1,000 years. Oh, 10,000, doesn't matter.
Guys still kind of look the same. Everybody, if you're talking about physical aspects, or environmental or societal technology wise. I need a little bit more information.
Right. And you even entered, you said that you entered another universe, and how did you manage to do that? And would you describe what it looked like?
So how I did it is you have to have, well, first of all, you have to have authority to go over to do it. I cannot just disclose that part, but the other universes are, the one that I went to was higher than this one. Physics were a lot different, the colors were a lot different, kind of like jumping from this dimension to some of the higher dimensions that I've worked on. And this universe was actually not too much higher than this one. It was only a grade higher. So we are technically a third dimensional universe. That's a beta. This one was a fourth dimensional universe, but not beta, which means the laws of one actually work over there and are applied by source and governed, which is not the case over here. So I had to abide by the real laws of one. You know, you couldn't hurt anyone, you couldn't, you know, influence damage on anybody. You know, accidents happen, but if I just walk up and stab someone, you get punished by source or the Immortal Seven. So the plants were different, obviously, depending on what area you go to. The galaxies work and function pretty much the same as here. Their physics are just a little higher, so things work a little bit more smoothly. The prana over there is a lot different and a lot cleaner. You know, so the species over there, you have humanoids, dragons, bird types, draconians. Some of the Octurian types were also over there as well.
Maybe that's where the dragons came from, because I also heard that they come from another universe. But have you been briefed at any point in the SSPs about possible upcoming cataclysms?
I have not been briefed by the SSP, but I have been briefed by the Starseed Council that I worked for, and that's, you know, they govern all of the starseeds, planets in the solar, or in this universe.
And what are their intentions with us?
That I cannot truly divulge. I'm sorry.
No
You're
worries.
not gonna like it though. That's all I gotta say.
Oh. But can you answer this? What does the process of ascension look like to you?
I have, as working for the Starseed Council for many years, and I've been on quite a few Starseed planets. This one is the most messed up, I'm not gonna lie. There is worse out there, I just haven't been assigned to them. So ascension can go any way that it possibly could for a planet. I have seen planets that have full dysphoria, all the consciousness of the people, or the majority of it, end up becoming on a higher level of evolution. And this just means that, you know, it's more of like a Buddhist mentality. You're a lot more tolerant to people who are different. You understand their views, even though that might be, you know, against yours. You're not violent towards it. You understand higher knowledge of physics, and understanding that alone can help ascension, because it will start taking you through the evolutionary steps. So I've seen planets that fully get certified to be part of the galactical community and not be a threat. And that's what pretty much ascension is. It is literally seeing an experimental planet with all sorts of humanoids or whatever that their experiment is, raise consciousness enough to be let out into the world and not have to be contained. If it is contained and considered a virus, it will be destroyed after a seed wipe and a second judgment. So
No, that's consistent. And have you heard anything about the limits of the universe? As in, for example, I heard that it was 15 trillion light years until we reach the end. Did you hear something like this?
Time is only relevant to what the item is experiencing in my understanding of things. So your 10,000 light years may not be the same as the universe's 10,000 light years. You know what I mean? So it's very hard, and unless you're getting sources from the creator races specifically who are working on the project, I don't trust time sources.
Actually, this is a pretty high authority because it's a race that has managed to reach the end, allegedly. It's a kind of a lesser known ET race called the Verdants. And they live 14 million light years away, and which is just a thousandth of the distance to the end of the universe, allegedly. But have you heard anything about the super wave, the galactic super wave that comes from the center of the galaxy and affects every single planet that comes in its path, which is everyone? And that is what accounts for the cyclic cataclysm every 12,000 years.
I can't say I really know too much about that. I've been in this universe a long time, respectively, but I have not been in this universe that long. So I don't remember the Electric Wars. I don't remember like half of the beginning part of the Draconian Andromedan Wars. You know, I actually came from this universe from Hanova, which is Central Universe, because I had a job to do, and I still have a job to do. So I'm on borrowed. I'm being borrowed right now from another entity to do a job here. So if the cataclysm happened sometime before that, I have no clue.
Cool.
I don't have any information, and the Stargate Council hasn't told me anything about that either. So all I know is that there is something going on with the fabric of this universe that is being incompatible right now. So it's causing issues everywhere.
Let's see. If you don't mind, I'm gonna segue into Hollow Earth now. When you were taken there, was it through? Was it directly like through the Earth, or was it through the poles, like we often hear?
Well, when they came to pick me up, a lot of the times when I went there, they knocked me out here and then took me down there. I don't know how they got me down there. So I know it was on a UFO. That's it. I don't know which direction they took. I don't know how they got, if they just teleported down there. They do have teleportation portals, so.
Cool. And this is something that's lesser talked about, but if you're going to believe, I mean, of course I do, but if you're going to believe this theory, then it kind of follows that the mantle, the halfway point of the mantle represents kind of a zero gravity, because otherwise how could you stand up on the inside of the Earth, right? So did you hear something about how the mantle is the source of the main source of the gravity, and it doesn't have, it's zero gravity or next to none in the middle?
No, there's still gravity in the middle.
Right, but then how come you're standing up inside?
Because of centrifugal force. The planet is still spinning.
Oh, right. Interesting. So I was reading this information. Good to know.
In the middle of what I call the inner Earth sanctuary, basically, there is a artificial star that actually makes your guys' electrofield and your spin rotation. Basically, the sun helps a lot too, but so that's why there's holes at the North and South Pole, because it actually helps the toroidal field flow through better. This planet used to be an actual planet until it got smacked and shattered, and they actually used the pieces to make a new planet. But there is a hollow core, so it's like a shell, and then you have the two poles, and then you have the lava that flows throughout all of the top part of that shell. So yes, we still have lava. Oh my gosh, there's still chambers in inner Earth.
Of course.
You know, it's like the honeycomb effect on the outside with the hollow Earth on the inside. And then, you know, so we still have eruptions and volcanoes and everything else, and our platelets are still, you know, subducting and submerging and making new crust. All of the physics are there, but, you know, you can, and inner Earth is absolutely beautiful. It's got its own terrain, its own plant life. The prana there is a lot nicer. Inner Earth people are getting upset that I'm talking about them recently, and I keep getting yelled at, but you know, because they're afraid, they're getting worried that people are going to start coming down there and causing issues. They're pretty much, it's a neutral zone. You have to be neutral to be down there. You know, you can't fight even on the intersections. Like if you fight, there is a police patrol down there and a military, basically, of many factions. So, you know, Draconian, Octurian, Sierrian, Chuxery, there's so, Palladian, you know, they all live down there.
Reptoids.
Yeah, reptoids too. And there are some reptoids who live in the catacomb chambers outside of inner Earth. And those guys, they kind of do their own thing. Some of them are a little bit more violent than most people would like, but that's why they live down there. You know, they do their own thing.
Got smacked and shattered. You just glossed over that really quickly. How the hell, when, who was responsible?
It happens way before I got here. This was in the archives that I ended up reading. Nibiru ended up smacking into Earth, and their atmosphere got totally messed up. I've actually been to Nibiru. There is life over there. It is very much domed and very much contained. So they have very much an Egyptian thing going on over there. When the last time I went over there a couple years ago, their king was Osiris. But I ended up, you know, with the whole inner Earth thing. So it showed basically what happened and how they remade it, and it was watching this holographic simulation thing that, you know, it's kind of like a tablet or a disc and came up, but for the archives. And basically I believe this is where a lot of the fighting started. So the Draconians owned the old Earth. It got destroyed, and so they pulled money together and made this new planet, which is much smaller, by the way, much smaller, and ended up reforming it with one of the artificial stars. Now, I've seen these artificial stars elsewhere throughout the galaxy for terraforming other round-like planets like Pluto.
And are they the guys who made our artificial sun inside Hollow Earth?
I don't know who made the artificial sun. I have no idea about that part, but they have been using it for quite some time. You know,
right.
They had to let everything muddle over and kind of evolve on its own and whatnot. But
and about Nibiru, is it true that it's a little smaller than the moon and that its overall color is light blue?
The one that I saw was pretty big, and it is like pretty much black.
Okay.
It doesn't really emit any light or anything like that because it's pretty much dead on the outside, but there is still civilization over there. They live in domes on that area. The core of the planet is still spinning, and so it's creating heat, but it's not green by any means on the outside. It looks like just a wasteland.
What I heard from a source is that it's a hollowed out comet, and that's how Syrians and the Draco use as motherships, or like, I don't know if it's true, but and is it true that Hollow Earth is entirely in the fourth dimension?
It does exist on several other dimensions, just like this planet exists on several other dimensions. So if ETs are coming over here, they can actually raise to another dimension, and the Earth will look completely different. It could have different continents, it could have different life forms and floral and everything else like that. And So it really just depends.
Right, but at least that's how I heard that it's a fourth and above, and there's no lower than fourth. So you can't get there with a 3D body. That's at least that's what I don't know if it's true, but and that it gets increasingly higher in dimension as you approach the artificial sun. And speaking of the artificial sun, um, I heard you. I heard the only time I've ever heard anyone speak about this is you when you said that there were floating cities around the sun. And can you confirm that? And what were they like?
Okay, around the sun and inner Earth, or around our sun?
Of course, in Earth, yeah,
Okay.
Hollow Earth.
So that is the central hub area. It also has the control panels. It helps stabilize the central sun, but there is like it's like a floating space hub city area. It's really pretty. There's a lot of nobles for noble houses and stuff that can go down there and live, and it's kind of like this world/universal area where you can just go, and they hold a lot of meetings down there. You have your food places and your living quarters. So yes, that part is true, where it does have a city around it. And I mean, it like actually floats in it. Now, the entire dome itself is it's got mountains and completely traversable. It's got forests and rivers and its own little sectioned cities and whatnot.
Have you been on the ground level too?
Yes, I have.
And is it true that you can see the curvature given that it's only about the size of Venus, the hole?
You definitely like see the curve. Yeah. I mean, it's huge though. Like, it's kind of like looking at a reverse sky, except for there's no, I mean, there's clouds and everything, because they have like their own rain and stuff. But other than that, like you can totally see to the other side, the forests and the cities.
So they still have a cycle, like hydrologic cycle, where water evaporates and it rains?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. And is it true that it's 1/4 ocean and 3/4 land?
I don't really know about the percentiles of it, but there's quite a bit of land down there. And there's quite a bit of, I wouldn't call them oceans, but I mean, I guess you could. It's like really big lakes.
And the Aryans there, did you find out their names? Because they're different from the Aryans in Camp Livingston.
The Nordics down in inner Earth are different from the ones in Camp Livingston, yes. The Aryans who are part of the Nazi Aryan faction, who work with the Dark Dracos and the ICC and a couple other factions, they are not the same at all. I don't really remember what they called themselves in Inner Earth. It's in a language I can't speak here, but and there's like 4 different types of Nords down there that live down there, but they're all different factions.
Maybe the name Arturians or Bodlanders or Ariani.
Ariani sounds familiar, yeah.
They're the guys who called in Admiral Byrd.
Oh, okay.
And do you know if these Hollow Earth Aryans are in league with the SSP, or how come they called you in there?
I had genetic contracts between them, the Dark Dracos, the Chakrel, and the government here ended up signing in on it too. But they ended up pooling their funding for experimental super soldiers to be created.
Interesting. And how does their level of technology compare to the SSP, for example?
That would depend on the faction. US, not so much. By themselves, not so much. The Chakrel actually come from Hanova, so their technology is incredibly high here. Very advanced.
Oh, but I was speaking about the Hollow Earth Aryans.
That also depends, because each faction has their own technology basis. They do trade, but again, they do follow the laws where if you don't understand how it works, then you don't get to use it. But their technology down there is pretty fair. It's at least 6 dimensions of knowledge worth. So, and that would mean like, advanced med beds, and the technology would be like, extreme AI, sentient AI for your ships. Definitely better building materials than the lower dimensions for sure. So, like, they're right next to a sun and it's not melting. But the sun down there is not extremely hot either. It's not like it would be like a white radiation star. So, and it doesn't produce the same radiation as our sun or any of the suns because it's artificial. So they can actually generate the frequencies that they want for the space that it's a part of. They're really actually quite cool.
And the temperature is the same year round, which is something like 24 degrees centigrade, right?
I'm not sure what that is.
Oh. And am I right?
It's about a good 75 degrees.
Yeah, that's about perfect. But this is kind of a conundrum. How can there be any wind down there?
Sorry. If you know how physics works for the toroidal flow of anything, which is the electromagnetic field that goes up, goes down, and comes around, it can actually create solar winds. That's how we get solar winds from our sun. And it creates the same effect down there as well.
Oh, okay. And these these Aryans, how long, do you know how long they have been there?
I have no idea.
But what about how long do they live on average?
That I also don't know. I didn't ask.
Yeah. What about what they eat?
Oh, the food down there is really awesome. They have a lot of veggies. There's some nuts down there. They have a lot of fruit. Their fruit is definitely different. They have golden apples down there, which is my favorite. And I mean, they're gold. They're not like, I don't know if their trees just ended up like finding a gold vein or something, or if it's like a species that comes from off-world. They do have off-world fruit that is transported here as well, and off-world foods. Earth is very interesting when it comes to cultural food because the inner Earth has adopted some of it as well. So you've got like cakes and cookies of different fruits that don't even exist up here.
They're all getting heart problems and diabetes too. Hey, do you mind if I squeeze in like 5 more questions and then I'm finished?
Sure.
No, because I'm the same way about
Oh,
5 left.
no. Then you finish and then I'm gonna wrap up and then we'll see if she wants to talk. Okay.
And the Hollow cities, is it true that they look kind of crystalline and that they're usually domed or round?
The ones on the surface area are definitely, they can be, they have very sacred geometrical shapes. So like the domes or the hexagrams, these obelisks, there's a lot of obelisks down there for structure, depending on which area you're going to. They don't really like a whole lot of tall stuff on the bottom area, for flight issues and whatnot, but in the gravity down there is a little bit different as well. It's a little bit lighter down there. It's not as strong as it is out here on the surface, but, and then, the intersection area where the star is and it like rotates around, that one is definitely a lot of domes. They do have a couple higher terraces and whatnot, but crystalline definitely. And that's because it actually is a power source. That is how they power a lot of their stuff. And Atlanteans had that technology as well. It's one of the 6th dimension technologies. It can be in higher. It can be a little tricky to harness, but once you get it, it is one of the best power sources that you can have. It's so abundant in the universe.
And have you seen other races there in Hollow Earth?
Other than humans, of course.
Yeah, I mean, You also mentioned that you don't have to be a benevolent, you just have to be neutral. So you even get Dracos down there, Draco.
Yes, we do get Dracos down there. And again, not all reptilians are evil, not all Dracos are evil, not Draconians are evil, and not all dragons are evil. All right, dragons are a completely different faction all on their own. And the royal Dracos are dragons, but there isn't a whole lot of them comparatively to the rest of the reptilians, you know. And with the Dark Draco fleets getting very diminished and a lot of their people getting freed because a lot of them were in slavery from the Dark Dracos, people need to realize that they have lives too. And just like any war, you get strapped into servitude and you get to do things you don't want to.
Cool.
You know, but down there, they're neutral. I've had a really good time with some of them, you know, never had a problem with them. There's no fighting down there. So, and if you don't like someone down there, you don't have to like everyone down there, but just don't be a jerk.
I bet you wouldn't mind living there, right?
I would love to live down there. The energies are really nice. I don't feel like I'm suffocating. I require a lot of energy and a lot of quanta. Like, I'm okay when the sun's out, but once it goes away, I start like starving. So living down there where the sun is shining 24/7 would be really nice for me. The food down there is amazing. You know, they don't use artificial sugars or anything in their food, so it's all good.
And they're all vegetarian?
No, not everyone.
Oh, okay.
There are certain species that have to have meat and flesh sources. It's just part of their nature. So, and there is animals on other planets that, you know, they can go hunt or raise for food. I come from Hanova, so we eat meat, but nothing gets killed, which is why birthdays are so important to us, because we take the umbilical cord and actually take it to our labs and grow the meat stock that we want. Nothing is ever born.
Interesting. And the lesser gravity there also would explain why most of these humanoid species there are taller than on average than on the surface. But also, have you heard about, this is my last one, that if there are other hollow populated planets inside of planets?
Is there? Yes, there's others.
Yeah, I would think so. And you've heard people have been there, right?
Yes.
Cool. Well, Dan, you can take it away.
Oh, thanks. I don't have too much else, Apollymi. I know you've been sitting there for a long time. You probably are saddle sore from us boring you. But okay, other than movie theaters, what forms of entertainment, drugs, and just some sort of just recreation for people to just decompress from whatever they're dealing with?
So this is going to be an interesting one. And I've had someone been waiting for me to talk about this for a while.
Then do it. Then do it now. Go ahead.
There is an actual system, and the Greys actually started this from my understanding, because some of them are developed not to be able to have emotions. And someone got smart and started making a device that allows you to harness emotions into a crystalline chip. So say that you're having a nice time at the beach with your girlfriends, you know, and you're emitting emotions, they can come and actually steal that from you or harvest it from you. So you'll just feel neutral, like you'll feel like all of the emotions just gone. And they'll store it into a chip, and they can sell that for credits in outer space, you know. So if an ET wants to feel what that person was feeling at that moment in time, and memories go for big bank up there. Yeah, I'm not joking. Any species who is programmed not to feel emotions, you know, they'll actually buy stuff. But if, like, we'll say a Sambrinian or, like, you know, the Yoyalan or whatever, if they want to know what a sunset on Earth feels like while you're on a date, they can actually strap this device to them, put that chip in and activate it, and they'll get all of that feeling, that sensation of whatever it is. And, you know, a lot of these ETs will come down and harvest emotions from just about everything, happiness, joy, in the bedroom stuff. So that is like
about that,
I
wouldn't know anything about that.
But no, seriously, like the bedrooms, the bedroom stuff for every species is different. So that actually goes for a really high price.
Hold on. How is it different in other realms? You know what I'm saying? Like what's going on?
Your guys' senses are completely different from everybody else's.
Explain some sort of off the wall ET, like what sex. I mean, like stuff that we obviously know what humans do, right?
Right.
Men and women, we copulate, but like what do other like how do they do things? Like
it depends on the species, but for those who are
species, like
okay, so let's say for some of the Andromedan residents, for their high council and for a lot of their species, they're humanoid. They look exactly like you. They could be walking around here with no problem, and you wouldn't even tell, except for they would be really more dimensionally defined, and their presence and the way they smell, for me anyway, because ETs smell different. But if they were to hook up with someone else, it would be like the most magical thing for them. Someone would be like, because their physics work differently, their abilities work differently. And when you're with someone who has abilities, you are basically interacting with their energy field. So it feels a lot more different, like intense, like that oneness feeling that people talk about. And, so they interact differently. And, humans are, I'm not saying every human. I know there's a lot of people who are evolved and who know what I'm talking about here. But for an ET, not having, like, even them not having that ability to just shut all that off, those extra senses off, they can record that and see and feel the experience.
Wow.
Humans are a little bit more primal. So.
Okay. Tell me about replicators and replicator technology as far as when it comes to food.
For food, It depends on who you're buying it from.
Okay, in so many words, can you literally like have someone like take a dump and then turn that into a cheeseburger? Like, no, theoretically. I know it sounds silly, but like.
You can make it look like a cheeseburger, and maybe make it look like.
That's not enough. That's not enough.
So the extreme high replicators, you cannot make something out of nothing. There always has to be something there. So for the advanced technology, if you have the frequency of your food and every particle of that food for those frequencies, the generator will basically take the protons, electrons, quarks, lipids, everything out of the universe itself, and will actually organize everything to where it needs to be. Super advanced technology. Not everyone gets that. We're talking low class. Your poop might look like a cheeseburger, but it's probably not going to smell like a cheeseburger, and it's not going to taste like a cheeseburger.
Okay. On to a more savory subject. Can you tell me about HARP?
HARP?
Yes, HARP, the weather.
I honestly don't know too much for the military function, or atmospheric observation of function of it, but the way that it actually works, because I actually have a smaller version where I live, and you can tell, I can feel that thing when it kicks on. It's got several frequencies that it can put out, and our weather change could be within 5 minutes to an hour or two. So yeah, it emits like this, it can emit this very low frequency wave, and then it'll start raining, and then it can emit this very high frequency wave, and we'll go from complete snow to within 5 minutes complete clear skies.
Okay, I only have 2 more questions left, Danielle. I appreciate you hanging on with us. So what races, and of course we all know there's reptilians, but what races eat humans, and what races keep humans as pets?
Sorry, this is the first one I was laughing at.
Oh, I don't care.
Any race can eat a human. Humans eat humans. So it really depends on the person. And you can actually find human meat at certain restaurants out in space and other ET species as well.
What's the name of the most predominant restaurant? Like, what's the equivalent of Ruth Chris out there?
I don't know the names of them. I don't know the names of them. I know you can find some in the Draco constellation, the Orion constellation, the Pleiades. What was that other place that I was at?
Get some
I
like
don't remember.
flambe. Yeah. You like human with that? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Tell me about other planets.
That's a long list.
Well, like the
Other
flora and fauna, you know what I'm saying? Like, so here on Earth, we have blue skies, we
right.
have, you know, a precipitation, we have surface dwelling humans, and we eat pretty much anything less sophisticated than us, okay? What is it like on these other planets that you've been to? I remember you talking with James Rink about other flora and fauna that can give you, if you're not familiar with it, you know, infections or blisters in the lungs, or hell, even
Yeah.
you know, what is it like? Can you talk about some noteworthy planets as our final question, if you don't mind elaborating on the planets
Sure.
that are worth writing home about?
I can't really give out the names of the planets for some of them. I can tell you that I have been to the Draconian homeworld in the Draco constellation. They have completely blue skies, and the flora and fauna are green like Earth. I was actually very shocked. And it's really well.
Amongst organic, is that a commonality amongst organic planets?
No, not entirely, just certain ones.
Okay.
I have been to planets that have purple skies, pink clouds, you know, they're black dirt. That one didn't really have too much flora fauna, but I've been to planets that were completely almost atmosphere ridden, like they had none whatsoever, and just completely rock. I've also been to other planets, like one of the planets in the Andromeda area is very pretty. They have like this turquoise colored sky. Their seas are really dark blue. The flora and fauna there are really interesting. They have a lot of white flora and fauna with colors in them, like kind of like pastel colors. Very pretty. I really like going to that one. There is also another planet in the Pleiades system that is kind of like relatively new. They have blue skies, decent clouds, but their flora and fauna is a mixture of reds and golds, greens, blues. Trees are furry, which is weird.
Okay, with barbs or actual fur?
Like it feels, I guess the closest thing would be like a kiwi, only thicker and fuller. And it actually like ripples when you touch it too. There's a lot of sentient plants out there that will interact with their environment.
Wow. Okay, well look, Daniel, if you have any closing remarks, Apollymi, I just want to thank you so much for making your first appearance on our show.
Yeah.
I've taken so many notes. I mean, like,
Yeah, I've already gone through my 70 questions, so, and also we're at 2 hours, so.
oh, okay, yeah. I just thank you so very much. I sincerely appreciate this. I can send you a link. I can send you and Daniel both a copy of this. And
yeah, that would be amazing. Thank you. I like to try to keep copies of all my interviews.
Oh yes, ma'am. I'll definitely send you a copy here soon. It's just gotta download and do its thing. But
and I appreciate you guys inviting me onto the show. I was super shocked when you guys reached out to me.
You shouldn't be. I've been wanting to get you on here for a long time. It's very nice. I really, really appreciate you being here.
Yeah, of course.
Daniel?
Yeah, it was a treat for me. Thanks for inviting me.
Okay, Apollymi, anything you want to volunteer, or any closing remarks, or do you have questions for us?
Well, I guess like I'm kind of curious on how you guys ended up finding me, because I'm not very well known.
No, James Rink talked about you. James Rink had you on a show. I mean, I'll never forget where it was. Kind of like 9/11, like that staged terror attack. I'll never forget where I was and what I was doing when I first heard my interviews with you. And I was lifting weights at City Club, which is the big gym right here in this Master Plan neighborhood. and I was just sitting there like doing bench press and shoulder press, and I was just like, damn, so you slipped through the gate or whatever, and that other person just wasn't as small as you. I was just sitting here thinking about all the stuff you said, and it was just mind-blowing. And you're talking about the gauntlet, Area 51, Area 52. And I was just like, oh my God. And then of course, Daniel and I, we sit here, we're best friends, we gossip, cackle, lay an egg before 5 o'clock in the morning. And so I'm like, yeah, oh my God, and so I reached out to you on Facebook, and I'm just trying to get you on the show. But I know none of this is here and there, this is all small talk, but I've been wanting to do stuff with you, and Daniel, who I always love to do things with, who brings a wonderful perspective, is someone I love to team up with. So I didn't want to do this without involving him, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, because like I just kind of started out, like 3 years ago now, I guess, on Cassidy Lightwing's show. So when you guys told me that you've been watching me since week 1, I was like, for which host? Because I had like a year time slot where I went quiet on orders for a while.
That's your prerogative.